All right, my name is Jeff Law. I'm the chief appraiser here, and it's 5:03, and I'll call the meeting to order. The Hood Central Appraisal District. I want to first of all verify the presence of a quorum, and we do have an official quorum with Mark O'Donnell, Richard Haves, and Scott Bradley here, and Rick Fry is also in attendance as a holdover, so we have a quorum. We're going to start by doing the statement of officer and the oath of office. I'll let Meg's going to do this. There are 3 documents that you guys are going to be asked to sign. One is the document that she already provided. I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then she's going to do the statement of officer that you'll need to sign first. And then she'll do the oath of office, which you'll sign second. Go ahead, Meg.
All right, so I'm reading from the second page in your packet. It's statement of officer. And if you agree that you solemnly swear that you have not directly or indirectly paid, offered, promised to pay, contributed, promised to contribute any money or valuable thing, promised any public office or employment for the giving or withholding of a vote at the election at which you were elected, or as a reward to secure an appointment, confirmation, whichever the case may be. So I hope you got it. You agree with that? Then would you please sign signature of office? And the third page that you have in the packet is the oath of office. So if you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Board of Directors of the Hood Central Appraisal District of the state of Texas, and to the best of your ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help you God?
I do.
Would you please sign?
You want to go ahead and notarize them?
I have.
Oh, you have? Okay.
She just got to sign them.
I'll sign them.
Then sign the third.
Yeah, the third document is a new document. I was going to kind of talk about it at during my chief appraiser's report, but if you've been given that in advance, so if you'll go ahead and sign that.
And Mr. Highsmith and Mr. Wall, you can sign my notary book. I've got everyone else's signatures on record. Got his there.
Signature, please.
I can go ahead and collect these from you. Save the acknowledgement you made yesterday. Okay. If you've all signed the acknowledgement, I can take it. Thank you. Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, congratulations, everyone. Now we have a new quorum, and you have been officially relieved of duty. The next things, yes, sir. The next thing we'll move on is the organization and election of officers. This is something that has to be done every January or at the first meeting of the year. So is there a nomination for chairman?
I nominate Scott Bradley as chairman.
We have a nomination of Scott Bradley as chair. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Bradley, you're now the chair. I am going to turn the job over to you, and you can call for the secretary.
Okay, so then we need to nominate and elect a secretary. Are there any nominations?
Nominate Richard as our secretary.
I'll second. Second. Any other nominations? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Richard.
Thank you.
Let me do that second one.
James.
Thank you.
James was a second. All right, so bear with me as I work through this to make sure I'm doing it the right way. So we're going to recognize visitors, and I think the only one signed up to speak is Mr. Fry. So let me get to a clock here, because you're going to have 3 minutes.
Not a minute more.
Not a second more. Your time is done. All right.
Well, you're ready. I'm ready.
Whenever you're ready.
First of all, welcome to New Winford. I appreciate your wanting to serve. Serving on a appraisal district is not all fun and games, simply because taxes are not very popular in the state of Texas right now. There's a lot of legislation going on, but I assure you that you're coming into an organization where we've hired a very, very good, probably the best in the state as far as our chief appraiser. The staff is very, very competent, and they do a wonderful job, and they make your job very easy. We recently have gone through a forensic audit. It took about 8 months, almost 8 months to do. And they looked at all of our financials, all the accompanying documents, and basically said I think we had a $24 discrepancy, and that was all that they could find. There wasn't any malfeasance or any missing funds or misappropriated funds. Our Granbury mayor seems to not accept that. Monday night, he went on and on about things that he didn't like, and those are his opinions. He didn't like the auditor we had previously. We went out for bids and got a new auditor. I didn't like that auditor, and I'm not sure what the deal is, but he's taken umbrance of TCDRS that changed in 2016, and nobody in this room had anything to do with that. Under their rules, it's a state-run retirement system, and there's no way anybody in this room or anybody associated with HCAD could put funds in someone's account without it being done through the payroll and properly done. He's insinuated that somebody got padded. It didn't happen. The audit proved that. The other thing that seems to be a deal is that there was a lot of work done previously about the possibility of building a new building. It never was brought forward for approval, but we did a lot of background work previous to when I got on here, and they talked about expanding the facility to house a driver's license, full service operation with the state. That drove the cost of the preliminary architectural drawings because you doubled the size of the building. There were a lot of things that they had input to, but the line was, we never built the building, nor did we ever seek approval, because once we got to a point where we saw what the figures were going to look like, we read the room and said, no, we can't do this right now. And so it was tabled. We did have some bills associated with. There was going to be a land swap between us and the school district to save us money. So we had some fees that related to appraisals, looking at the land, some other things. But rest assured that all the money is accounted for. You've got a great organization to step into. You'll find that the board doesn't have a lot of authority to do a bunch of stuff, other than we need to get the tax rolls. That's his job. And we help with the budget, and that's about it. And this welcome board. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, sir. And I think he's the only name on the list. All right. Then our next action item is the consent items from the agenda, which are going to be the minutes, financial statements, and approval of an invoice. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. There we go.
Move to accept the consent agenda.
In a second.
I'll second.
James and Richard and James, sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is approved. All right, general action items. Discuss and take action by resolution to update signers and individuals. Is that something we have to vote on to update? Yeah, because it's got to be in the minutes. All right. So
I can explain it if you want me to explain.
Go.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. And just for Mr. Highsmith's and James's understanding, see the little dots next to those correspond with the tabs over here. So if you wanted to look at, the agenda, the minutes, you could flip over to those. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. Meg does a good job as far as trying to keep,
awesome job.
a little flip there quickly through those tabs. So anyway, so this first action item, or the only action item we have tonight, has to do with the signature cards at the bank. Right now, Mr. Fry, myself, and Meg are on the signature card at the bank. And now that he stepped off and Scott's become the chair, if it's the board's wishes, we can add Scott to the signature card. That requires that this board take action, and we have to actually take the minutes of the meeting down to the bank to show the bank that yes, he's actually been put on there, or is being asked to be put on there. So it's kind of a formality. What are your options? Well, you could say, no, we don't want him to be the signer. Maybe you want Richard to be the signer. Our checks only require 2 signatures, and right now Meg and I sign on all the checks. This would be just in the event if either Meg or I became incapacitated and we still needed to get bills paid or something like that, then we could call in this signer. Historically, it's been the chair that would be on the signer. So your pleasure.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to go ahead and, let's see, remove Rick Fry as the signer for First National Bank of Granbury, and to make Scott Bradley, the newly elected chairperson, the signer for First National Bank Granbury.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second from Mark to remove Rick as a signer from the First National Bank of Granbury bank account, and add myself. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Vote is 5-0 positive. All right, so that takes care of our action items. Our other item on the agenda is our appraiser's report.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, again, I'll echo what Mr. Fry said. Welcome to the Appraisal District's Board of Directors. Welcome back to the Appraisal District's Board of Directors. I'm not going to do like a big orientation. I would be more than happy to sit down with you, any of you, honestly, but some of these others have been around, but I'd be more than happy to sit down with either one of you and just have a discussion about kind of what we do, answer any questions you might have regarding the Appraisal District. That document that y'all signed earlier, that's a brand new law that's just come into place. And it's basically, it's the work of a Republican and a Democrat out of Tarrant County. And to give you a little bit of a background, a few years ago, some radical type individuals got on the Tarrant County. Well, it's whenever they started having elected officials. In counties of 75,000 or greater, there can be 5 appointed members. The tax assessor collector would serve as the 6th member, and then there are 3 members that are elected by the public at large. Okay, we're not of that size, and I had the mayor actually asked me a question one time about when will that happen, and I said, well, it happens based upon the 10-year census. So we won't know. We will most likely exceed 75,000 by the time 3030 rolls around, but we won't be subject to this law until 3030. But nevertheless,
2030.
2030, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Easy now.
3030 is a gun.
Yeah, be long gone.
Be retired by the end. But when these elected officials came on, some ideology came into the board. Not only was it Tarrant County, but Tarrant County, Johnson County, Bexar County, and some other counties decided that they wanted to change the way the appraisal district operated. And quite frankly, there was nothing in the law that authorized the board of directors to do some of the things that they were wanting to change. One was they wanted to go to a once every 3-year reappraisal cycle, which they can do that. However, there's another process that happens every other year where it's called a ratio study or a property value study by the state comptrollers, which happens every other year. And if you're in a year in which you're not reappraising, but they're going to study your appraisals, it can have a huge impact on school funding, school finance. So that was one of the things. The other thing that happened at Tarrant that they were wanting to do is right now there is a 10% appraisal cap on all residential homestead property owners. If you have a residential homestead, your appraised value cannot go up more than 10% per year. Now, I can discuss with you the difference between appraised value and market value at a different time. It's a long discussion, but I'll be more than happy to have that discussion. Well, some individuals at the Tarrant County, and I'm not picking on Tarrant, but this new law came out of Tarrant County. They wanted to change it from 10% to 5% on all residential properties. Well, that stirred a lot of lawyers' minds up because it was the legislature only authorized a 10% cap on homesteaded properties, not any other percentage on all residential properties. So some of the state reps, Chris Turner and Charlie Guerin, started passing or introducing legislation to basically stop this board from doing the things that they were doing. The only thing that made it out of the legislature was the document you just signed. It was an acknowledgement by all members of the board of directors to understand what their roles and responsibilities on the appraisal district board were. Not, and it didn't say, well, and here's what we can't do. It just says, here's what you're responsible for doing. And as Mr. Fry just kind of said, you know, and I'm not going to read this whole document that I have here, but like one of the primary duties is to just establish where the office is going to be. Well, thankfully, you don't have to do that anymore. Here we are. Now, if you do get a notion or whatever says, let's go build another building or let's go buy something, well, we'll have a talk first. But that would be something that is in your purview. Hire the chief appraiser. That's already been done. If you feel the need to change me, you have that prerogative. You have one employee. That's me. I have 17. I have 17 employees. Some things that have happened in the past is that the board of directors wanted to be involved in the human resources side of this, and it's like, no, you have one employee. That's me. If you don't like the way it's working, you can fire me. I'm your employee. But you can't fire them. I can, but you don't have that. You have me. As Mr. Fry also stated, we have to do a budget every year. And that's one of the main things that you guys get involved in is the budget. How much money are we going to set aside and set as our budget? And then that budget is submitted to the taxing units, and then we get our revenue from them. So if I say we need $3 million, we take that $3 million and we allocate it amongst all the taxing units based upon their tax levy. GISD being about 70% of that. Hood County's, no, it's not 70%, it's about 65%. Hood County's about 25%, and then the city of Granbury is about 7 or 8%. And then Tolar City, Talapan ISD, Tolar, the rest of that is split up amongst those. So that's one of your responsibilities is to adopt the budget. Now, I'll develop it, I'll bring it to you, and I'll submit it. We'll have a long conversation about the budget, and I'll go over, here's some areas we think we need to increase, here's some areas where we think we can decrease, and we'll try to have a good budget that doesn't have any fluff in it, but gets us the money that we need in order to operate. But that's one of your jobs. You just did the electing of organizing the office, organizing the board. You elected a chair and you elected a secretary. But you also have control over policy, human resource policies, board of directors policies, investment policies, purchasing policies. All of those things are all under your purview too. So I typically will develop them. I don't typically change them every year, but there are certain policies like the investment policy has to be readopted by the board every year. So I'll bring that to the board in a subsequent meeting where we'll say, here's the investment policy. We'll give you opportunity to read it and everything. And then you can make changes if you want there. It's a pretty strict one that you have to kind of follow some of the laws. But we'll talk about that there, and then you would adopt that and say, this is going to be our investment policy, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that you do, but there's a lot of things that really you shouldn't dip your toe into because it's outside the purview of what the board of directors' responsibilities are. You cannot, some things that I want to share with you that will get you in trouble that are criminal acts. You cannot talk to me or any of my staff about values outside of an official meeting like this. So if you said my appraisal notice went up really, really high, you cannot come to me and say, hey Jeff, I think my value's too high. That's a criminal, it's in the penal code that you've actually done a criminal act, and that's a violation of the law. Now, what you could do is you could come to a public meeting like this and say, hey, I'd like to talk about my value. We can do it in a public meeting. Or you could hire a property tax consultant and let the property tax consultant deal with your value and things of that nature. If you're over 65, I'm not going to look at anybody, but if you're over 65, don't worry about it. You have a tax ceiling. You have frozen taxes. I can raise your value up to $5 million. It's not going to change your taxes. It actually could be beneficial.
Yeah.
I can explain that later too. But another thing that you can't do that's a criminal act is be very careful when taxing unit people, taxing unit employees, taxing unit officers come to you to talk about value, come to talk to you about appraisal district things. Because if they come to you with the point of trying to influence you over the values, now, generally speaking, they might come to me. Like, for example, let's say the city of Toller needs a new fire truck. And they're like, well, can you come in and raise all the values by 20% because we need to buy a new fire truck? That's against the law. Now, they can come into a public meeting and they can talk. They can't come and talk to you with the purposes of trying to influence something to get their values raised or something like that. Again, it's a misdemeanor. It's a crime, basically. So just some precautions about be careful who you talk to. Be careful if, for example, a property owner comes to you and says, man, I got an ARB hearing. You probably ought to say, hey, we don't need to talk about that. You need to go down and talk to the chief appraiser. If you get a property owner that comes to you and says, next door neighbor, blah, blah, stop. I can't really talk to you about it. It's against the law. You need to go down there. Now, if you want to call me and say, hey, Jeff, my neighbor just came over and saying his value's too high. I told him just to come talk to you. Perfectly fine. Okay. But I would highly recommend you not engage in conversations because they're there trying to influence you. And the legislature has stepped in and says, no, we're not going to allow that type of influence. And then they put in there, it's probably a class C misdemeanor, that type of thing. So, and I don't want you guys to get in trouble, but if you get questions from the public like that, just send them to me and then I'll talk to them or I'll get them with an appraiser or something like that. We can resolve their issues. You sound like you're going to ask a
Well,
question.
I was just going to mention something. It is given the attention the audit has been getting in city council meetings and in the newspaper. Media relations policy is.
Generally, it comes to me. I mean, that's what, but I will say that I would never tell you or this newspaper that they can't talk to you guys. I mean, and when I was at TAD, the newspaper had one of my board members on speed dial. I mean, every time something came up, he was more than happy to talk to the newspaper about it. But I would not say that you can't. You may not have all the answers to them, but you could definitely have an opinion. But I think you're perfectly fine talking to the media, the news media about it. But like, here's the ex parte communications. The one.
Hang on, I'm gonna stay on the appeal, the values, because of my line of work. It's not out of line for someone to call me and say, hey, my taxes went up. What do I do? Okay, you need to go down to the appraisal district and appeal your values.
Yeah, file a protest.
So, and that's actually something that I tell, whether right or wrong, I tell a lot of my clients, hey, when you get your letter, if it's more than what you pay for the house, go walk in and argue.
No, I think you're perfectly fine in giving that kind of advice to someone. But I'll go down there. Now, we got a board meeting tonight, and I'll go down there and I'll tell Jeff about it.
No, it's their responsibility to walk in the office. I just tell them where to go.
Don't bring their argument to us.
Right. Okay.
Don't advocate for them, basically.
I'll make the realtors do that.
I am going to read this part about the ex parte communications because it is something that is important. A board member commits a Class C misdemeanor offense if the member directly or indirectly communicates with the chief appraiser on any matter related to appraisal of property by the appraisal district. That's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
You can call me and say, hey, I told my neighbor to call you, expect a phone call. That's fine. We're not talking value. Okay.
But I can't say, hey, my neighbor's house needs to come down $20,000.
Yeah. However, this type of communication is allowed here in an open meeting of the board of directors, right here, or a closed meeting of the board of directors held to consult with its attorney about pending litigation. Let's say HEB has sued us and we need to go into executive session and talk about this litigation that we're involved in. And we're going to talk about the value. We're in a public meeting, an executive session. with our attorney present, now we can talk about value. You know, we've appraised it for $5 million. They want us to appraise it for 1,000. I probably would talk about that. Well, I'd probably tell them we're not, but we'll see you in court.
Right.
But that at a public meeting, we could talk about stuff. Okay. Here's the part that says these ex parte communication provisions do not prohibit a board member from transmitting in writing to the chief appraiser without comment a complaint by a property owner. In other words, so-and-so called me, they're upset about their value. Here's their account number, and I've told them to call you. That's fine. A board member, officer, or employee of a tax unit commits a Class A misdemeanor offense if they directly or indirectly communicate with the chief appraiser or another employee of the appraisal district for the purposes of influencing a property value unless they own or lease the property themselves. Again, same thing. Don't come talking about value. This is an ARB one. Be careful talking to the ARB if you know the ARB about what's going on. So that's pretty much the ones that'll land you in jail. So I don't want any of that to happen.
Nope.
But again, if Meg, if you want to get a copy, they already have a copy of that document that they signed because you had sent it to them. Right. And then you gave. So I would recommend that'd be a good little document for you to review. That's kind of showing you here's what your responsibilities are. And then if you got any questions, by all means, come talk to me. Be happy to sit down with you and go over it. Be careful about violating the walking quorum, which is basically you talking to him and then he tells Richard what you said and all that sort of stuff. That'll get you in trouble. And then the last one would be is when we go into executive session, always remember that you can't talk about what we talked about in executive session or other people outside of executive session. That's another one of those things that might land you in jail or a big fine. So, but anyway, welcome. It's not that hard.
No.
I earned my pilot's license a long time ago, and people would ask me, how was the flight? And I said, uneventful, which to me, an uneventful flight was a really good flight. Yeah. And so what I hope for this board is that we have a lot of uneventful board meetings.
Yeah.
So nevertheless, I will hush up, turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Or answer any questions that you may have.
No, and I wrote two things down so I didn't forget them. The property value study.
Yes.
And of course the values have settled down, but when there's times of lots of real estate sales and high appreciation, we don't have any control over that as far as values changing. So in theory, if somebody's coming to us, I'm like, that's out of our control.
Yeah, it really, I would agree. I mean, that's our job.
Yeah.
To appraise. You're not an appraiser.
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming that none of you are appraisers, but you're not an appraiser. That's our job.
Yeah. But the state reviews, and if we're not within a certain percentage, actually we get in trouble and the entities get in trouble.
To give you a quick synopsis on that, every other year the state comptroller's office comes in and does a study. And what they will do is they will randomly choose properties to be studied. Now, they randomly choose properties that have sold. If in like the commercial side where there's not as many sales, then they'll randomly choose commercial properties and they'll do appraisals. So what they do is they'll come in and say, here's a piece of property that sold. We got the sales price for $525,000. The appraisal district has it appraised at $425,000. They'll do that ratio and figure out that it's probably I learned a long time ago, don't do math in public. It's about an 89% ratio.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be at 100. By state law, we're to appraise at 100% market value, which market value typically is being the price at which the property would sell if listed on the market and certain conditions apply. So the idea is if it sold for 525, we should have it appraised somewhere around 525. If we have it too low, then they'll say it's too low. And they'll study thousands of properties like that. And then at the end of the day, what they'll do is they study it based on school districts, by the way. So we have a Lipan, Toller, and Granbury School District, but then they'll also study some of the Glen Rose ISD, some of the Bluffdale ISD, and some of the Glen Rose ISD because they overlap
Cleveland.
into, not Cleveland.
Okay.
Cleveland stops at our county line, but
Okay.
Granbury ISD goes into Johnson County,
That's what it
Glen
was.
Rose, Bluffdale, and Godly.
Godly.
I-
You said Glen Rose twice, so
Okay,
that's
yeah,
up to me.
Godly is the other overlapping, but they'll also study them in conjunction with the county that they're in. And it's basically a study to come back and see how close to 100% are we. That's really what it boils down to. And they will study residential property in what they call 4 different stratums, which is basically everything from zero to like $15,000 doesn't get studied. And then it's like 15 to 35, 35 to 152, and 152 to 700, and then 700 on up. So they break it all up into different categories and they study each stratum. And we get a ratio for each stratum. And then we get an overall ratio. And if we don't fall within to what's called a 5% margin of error, either way, then our study is considered outside the confidence interval. And if we're outside the confidence interval, which generally means we're too low, then the comptroller reports that information to the Texas Education Agency. And then the Texas Education Agency uses that information to determine how much money our school districts will get. And basically what it boils down to is this: you were too low. Your value should have been here, but your values were here. There's a gap. We're going to give your school district an allowance from the state of a certain amount, but we're not going to make up that gap. You're going to have to make that gap up on your own. So they wind up having a shortfall in the amount of money they raise locally and the amount of money they get from the state. So our goal is to be within that margin of error. And if we're within that margin of error, it's said that the Texas Education Agency will give that district its full state funding based upon the school finance formulas. Really complicated, and I don't pretend to be a school finance expert at all. But every other year we have to go through this ratio. 2026 will be a ratio study year for us. And I've already had my commercial appraiser come to me and say we're too low in land on commercial property and we're too low on our improvements in commercial property. That's what the first initial study, our internal ratio studies are showing. So we're going to look at it. I told him the other day, or I actually told him this morning, to give me what you think we need to do as far as land values go, which generally is the price per square foot. We're too low. It's indicating we're too low. And then what you think we need to do as far as our our replacement cost new on our improvements, our buildings and things like that, which you all probably know the price of construction has just gone up and up and up and up and up. And that's where we'll fall behind as we're here. And then a year and a half goes by, prices of 2x4 and concrete and everything else has gone up. And then now people are buying and building based upon this. And we're sitting down here at this. We got to play a little catch up. So commercial will have to be adjusted some this year. And certain pockets of residential will have to be adjusted. We don't paint with a broad brush on residential properties. What we'll do is we'll look at it neighborhood by neighborhood, area by area, and we'll do a ratio study in those areas to say, what's the ratio for this subdivision? Like even in Pecan, I wouldn't do one ratio on all of Pecan. I would do, what does the river look like? What does the golf courses look like? What do the air parks look like? What are the non-golf river airport?
What do the basic houses
look like? And so we'll do multiple ratio studies in there to see, okay, it looks like all the river properties are too low. Everything else might be okay, but maybe all the properties along the river need to be adjusted up by 5% or something like that. So we don't paint with a broad brush. We'll look at it on an individual case basis. We may come back and say some areas, some subdivision or some areas are too high.
Yeah.
Let's lower them by 3%, and everything in that neighborhood will get adjusted down. There's a process that we've dealt with for years called sales chasing. It's easy. It's easy to be a chief appraiser whenever you go around and you only adjust the properties that have sold, and you have all that data. But what if Mark's house sold and Richard's didn't, yours didn't, and I only raised his because I got a sales price on his. That y'all's didn't sell. That's not fair and equal. That's not fair and equal appraisal. So if we go in there and find out that these properties over here are selling much higher and we need to make an adjustment, then we're gonna put an adjustment on the whole subdivision and everybody's values are gonna go up a little bit, try to show what's happening in the marketplace. And we do recognize that the residential housing has slowed.
Yeah.
And we'll account for that based upon what a lot of people don't understand sometimes is that if I start out here in 1 year and here's where all the properties we're selling for, I already started out low. And then we come back the next year and I make this big jump. They're like, my property can't go up that much in 1 year. I said, I agree, but you're assuming that I was right last year.
Yeah.
You assume that my value was correct then.
Right.
You protested before the year before that saying it wasn't right. But so it's interesting how it works. But property value study is a big issue that all appraisal districts have to deal with all throughout the state. And they do, the state comptroller does about half the school districts 1 year and then they do the other half the next year. So it's our turn.
Yep.
In 2026.
We're on the even year section. So.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any questions for Jeff? Okay. The other thing, and is actually the next item on our agenda, is proposed date for our next meeting. In the past, we have kept our meetings set every month. We don't always have to have a meeting. Some months there's not, and it's happened 2 or 3 times. There's just not a lot to do, and so Meg will send something to have. We don't have anything. Meeting scratched. But in the past 2 years, we determined it was better to keep it on the schedule for our sanity at least, to know I have a meeting that day, have to keep that day clear, rather than something coming up in the last minute. Sure. All of us, what day are you free? What day are you free?
And just so you'll also know, we set the third Thursday of the month as our anticipated board meeting day. So if you want to go ahead and block that date off, but that's when, like, technically this is not the third Thursday.
It's not, because there was a conflict
the last time. So
last week.
At that December meeting, we all agreed, the board agreed to move it to this date instead of the normal third Thursday of the month. So if you want to anticipate third Thursday of the month, that's when we will anticipate having the meeting.
So if y'all will check calendars real quick, just make sure that the 19th is acceptable.
It's good on mine.
Good on mine.
I'm good.
Excellent. John?
I can make it work.
The big months, if you will.
Yeah.
Generally, January is always a very important month because we're reorganizing and or we're doing the oaths. Actually, like next January, we won't do the oaths because you're serving a 2-year term, but we will have to reorganize from a chair secretary perspective. So January is always a big issue, big month. December is always a big month because we're always trying to tie up loose ends. If there's any final business that we need to conduct for the year, our calendar year is January to December. So January is a big month. December is always a big month. And then usually sometime around June can be a big month because I have to present the I have to submit the budget to the taxing entities by June 15th. So a preliminary budget needs to be looked at by you guys and sort of not approved, but everybody's looked at it and said, I think this is pretty good. Let's send it. And then we can get feedback and we can make adjustments, but we'll normally adopt the budget in August or September. September can be a big month. It will be a big month this year because we have to do a biennial reappraisal plan. And it will be something that you guys will look at and authorize. I'll pretty much write it up and you guys will approve it.
Okay.
I kind of pulled a fast one time on the board and because the law actually says that the board of directors shall develop a biennial reappraisal plan. So I sent a thing out to the board saying,
put it together.
It was crickets. For like 2 weeks, I didn't even get a question like, what does this mean? We have to develop. Then finally, I sent them a draft version and said, here's something that I've worked up. That,
Yeah.
But the board didn't say a word. They just like, I thought I'd at least get tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do when you say the law says I have to develop a biennial reappraisal plan. But no, we'll help you with that too. We've already we already have one. All we really do is take the one that we've had from the previous year and say, is there anything we need to change, or is there something we want to do different? So it's not that hard. We do have to adopt one. It'll be a 2-year cycle. So it'll be the 27, 28 reappraisal cycle plan. So, but that'll have to be done by September the 15th. So that could be a time that either we do it in August, or we might have to move that September meeting date up to the second Tuesday so that we can officially have it done by the September 15th. So look, but I'll help y'all with those things that says, you know, we can't meet on the third Thursday this month because law says we got to do this by this date.
Yeah.
So, but we'll help you. We'll get it there.
Excellent. Any questions?
Okay.
All right. Then I would entertain, is there anything I missed?
Nope.
Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mark? Second. Second from Richard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned at 5:43.
We have a couple of things that I need.
You want
signed.
kill the
Mr. Fraser,
sound?
The secretary, if you would sign that, please.
Well, I was hoping to be done by 5:30.